So, who do you think is more capitalistic, America or China? So, this is a big, obviously, you would think America, right? It's capitalistic, democratic, and China isn't. Let's go through the main pillars of capitalism and let's see what we conclude. So the first main pillar of capitalism is private property. People are able to own their land and therefore, not be serfs, not be slaves, not be under the government jurisdiction. They themselves can make their own way. Well, recent years we've seen that not occur because with a 20% increase in property prices in America, a massive boom there, and this is global. Everywhere you go to Canada, it's even worse. Go to Israel, go to England, massive property blooms created by the government printing money have basically priced out the ordinary man. So we've seen rates of home ownership decline and decline and decline. In Britain, it used to be about 80%. In the 80s, we're about 60 to 65% now in Britain. So it's getting lower and lower. And in America, we're seeing the giant companies, BlackRock and Vanguard, buying up whole rows of housing, and they are basically creating rent slaves. That is the first thing that's happening in the West. In China, on the other hand, we have the Chinese government clamping down on all their property speculation. So obviously Chinese property is the biggest what's it called, the biggest bubble in the world, right? $62 trillion. But they are saying enough is enough. We're not going to allow you to get out, for this to get out of control. That's why we've had the Evergrande. That's why we've had the government start slowing this down on purpose, putting the brakes and saying, no, we're not going to allow people to be priced out of housing and just for it to be used as a speculative asset. People have to be able to live in them. No more ghost cities where you're just, selling the property again, and then that guy sells it, and again, no one actually lives in there. We're not having it as a speculative asset. We want people to actually live in those places. So central London, for instance, it's clearly, they're all empty, right? It's like 60% of those places are empty, and they're just sold, held for a few years, and then resold for a much higher price to another billionaire who sells it to another billionaire who sells it to another billionaire. And it's just basically an asset. It's not actually for someone to live in, and that's not what it should be. So private property, China's doing something, the West is doing nothing to help their poor. Next one is competition. So competition is a vital factor. And what that means is in competition is if I'm selling something and then someone sells it for either cheaper or more efficiently or a better product, then they'll get more customers. That is not happening in the West. There is very reduced competition due to the high barriers of entry that the government has put in. You try open a bank, you can't do it anymore because the amount of regulations that are imposed by the government is heavy. But amazingly, in the 19th century, there were thousands of banks. Every single city had their own local bank. A little town had 2 or 3 local banks run by local people. I mean, I know for us now it sounds insane, but that's the way it was. There were hundreds of thousands of banks in America. Now we're looking at about 3,000 and going down and down and down every single year. And it's basically becoming impossible. And banking is the catalyst of any capitalism. You need private banks because obviously in communism you just have one bank, the government, and capitalism thrives through having competitive banking as well as competitive industries. Now as well, any other competition, you've got Amazon, which isn't competitive. It lost leads. It should be illegal. Any losing a company that loses money for extended period of time, you can make a sell. We're going to sell one product below cost price, to get people in, but the rest of the products we make money in. Very capitalistic thing to do. Fine. You can't keep losing money for 20 years, right? You cannot do that. Now, Amazon, other than AWS, which is their web service, loses money on everything, on their TV, on their Prime, even on their actual Amazon delivery. It barely breaks even, but basically they're making a loss on that. All this stuff they lose money on. Uber loses tons of money, has never made a profit. Tesla loses, it's supposedly making money, but we know it's from green credits and things like that. Again, loses money, all these companies. In capitalism, that should not happen. They should go bankrupt, and that's it. Only if you make money, I sell something I make something for $1 and I sell it for $1.10. Brilliant. You sell it at 90 cents, you're going bankrupt. That's not the way it works now. China, ruthless competition, absolutely ruthless. They don't lose money. They're just ruthless competition between parties. But they've also started creating these huge monopolies. Alibaba, Didi, Tencent. What did the government do? We're not having this anymore. We're going to break you up, and we are not going to allow monopolies to occur. In America, Facebook wins in every court case it goes to, saying they're not a monopoly when clearly they are. And we also had, who was it? Not Google. I think it was Google as well, that they also won their competition. No, it's Apple, sorry. Apple won against someone saying, you're excluding us from being on your Apple iStore. Clearly that's a monopoly. No, they're not, apparently. They're not actually a monopoly, and it's fine. That's how it is in America, that all monopolies are completely protected by the government, protected by these lower courts. In Facebook's case, it wasn't even allowed to go to Supreme Court. It was just blocked. It was said, no, you can't say we're a monopoly when clearly they are. In China, they're clamping down and they're not letting this happen and saying the buck stops here. The government's in control. We care about the people. We're not going to let this happen. Was this price signaling? Price signal, the ultimate price signal is a price signal of money, interest rates. So if there's a lot of inflation, interest rates goes up because I'm going to lose money through inflation. Every year we lose 6% at the moment. So obviously, if I'm going to give you my $100, I want more than 6% because it's depreciating 6%. Not anymore, buddy. You're getting 0.1%. Now, it would be uncapitalistic for it to be 5.9%. It would be uncapitalistic to be 5.8 if it's at 6. But we have it at 0.1. So what is happening is the government manipulates in the West. The Fed is manipulating the interest rate, both on the short term and the yield curve and the base rate and whatever you want. They've stuck their figures everywhere and the repo rate everywhere. So there's no price signals anymore. The price you see of the interest rate is 100% manipulated. Right? The government is so involved in that it's ripping off the person. In China, it does so a bit, don't worry, but nowhere near what it's doing in the West. Entrepreneurship. Who do you think is more entrepreneurial, Amazon or Alibaba? Well, I can tell you, it's so clear. WeChat, the way it's connected to payments, the way they use technology in China is far superior and far more down the road than America, right? America is very behind in the technology-wise. Everything was basically copied off Alibaba. That's the way Amazon worked. Nothing really so innovative there. Okay, you definitely have some ideas like Tesla, extremely innovative before its time, but Didi, for instance, for cars, way more advanced than Uber ever was, and it's got 90% market share, so it's so far ahead. So I've given it to China in that regard. And finally, risk and reward. So as I've said before, the whole point of capitalism is I take a risk and I get more rewarded. If I take a less risk, I don't get rewarded as much. Now, everyone knows the government's buying corporate bonds. The government is only there for the stock market, so they can take as much risk as they want. We have SPACs, which are worthless pieces of garbage, being going for tens of billions valuation. Yes, they're worthless, but we know the government's going to support the stock market and won't let it crash. And so therefore, we can come up with whatever stupid idea we want. We've got a great algorithm to figure out what people want to eat in the morning. And so we're creating a company based on that worth $15 billion. Have you got any customers? No. You got any plan how you're going to do that? No. Do you think it will make a profit? No. How do you plan to make a profit eventually? Nothing. So this is where we are. There is no real risk reward anymore in the capitalist system. It's literally just go to market, go and do an IPO. The whole thing's backed by the government. However risky it is, however stupid the idea is, just go for it. It doesn't matter. That doesn't work in China. If you're not making money or actually have a good intention to make money very soon, and all of them make money. Alibaba, Tencent, Didi, all their tech makes money. There are no losers like Uber. Right, Uber and Didi is you cannot compare the two. Uber has never made a profit in its life. Diddy has only made profits. So it's completely different. I mean, obviously at the beginning it didn't. Very different kettle of fish here. And so then my final conclusion is China, with its way that the government is clamping down and trying to stop the monopolies and trying to stop the property boom and has clamped down on the private tuition industry, which was worth billions of dollars. In one day, they stopped it. They said, we're not going to allow this. You ripping off parents' private tuition, no more. Stopping the homework boom, just completely resetting its economy to be more focused, more capitalistic, while America is just monopolies and rent slaves and communism. That is what communism is. Feudalism, right? Feudalism, communism, stroke, same thing, where the government is responsible for everything. The government dictates what's ever going on. We know the stock market for years. It's called the Fed put. It only cares about what the Federal Reserve is doing. No one cares. Couldn't care less what anyone else is doing. Couldn't care less about GDP results, couldn't care less about inflation, couldn't care less about anything. Just the Fed. Whatever the Fed says, that's what we care about. That is not capitalism. A central bank is not capitalism. So yeah, there you go.